All right, welcome. We have the 6" by 9" piece of paper here. This is 100% cotton paper. I have my paints here of cadmium red, new gamboge, and down here where you can't see it, I have ultramarine blue. Those are the only three paints I'm going to be here using in this work. And before we get started, we need to make sure that this is fully wetted down. Right now, my work no longer has a nice sheen to it. So I'm just gonna take some clear water with this very large brush I have and just kind of make it a little bit shiny. All right, so now, I know it is evenly wet, which means I am ready to go. So with the composition I'm doing, I'm going to try and keep a white area about here. I'm going to halo a lot of yellow around it, and then I'm going to start painting in some greens for the landscape. So I'm just going to use a large brush. I'm going to use my 1/2 inch. Just get a little bit of water on it, and I'm going to get some straight new gamboge, as clean as I can get it. I don't want this to be too dark or anything, so this is going to be very light, but I want to maintain around this white area because this is going to be the glow of our sun coming through the trees. So just trying to get some coverage on here. Nothing, just gonna go ahead and try and get some yellow on here. And so that's pretty good with that. So now I'm going to take the new gamboge, and I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to it. I actually want that a little bit more orangish, so I'm going to grab a little bit more of the new gamboge. And you'll want a lot of this paint. So it is fairly dark, just kind of get a little, that's kind of what we got going on there, and I feel that should be pretty good. Kind of want to establish some ground down here. Oh goodness, I really like this color. It's this kind of like rich olivey green we got going on here. But the main thing is we will have a shaft of light here and a couple smaller ones here. So I definitely kind of want to go around those with the greens, with the green that we have here. And of course, I did not mix enough paint. Do as I say, not as I do, and always try and have a lot of your paint mixed up. So just kind of wanting to go through here, just kind of like, I'm gonna kind of like, don't be afraid to kind of like leave it a little bit blotchy, because that will help kind of like give it that foresty feel as you are working on your works. I'm gonna kind of I may come in there with something darker later, but I kind of just want to come in here with a little bit of this back here too. Next, I think I'm gonna come in with some straight ultramarine blue, maybe with just a little bit of the cadmium red added to it. Kind of just want like this kind of like dull purple that kind of can live on like the bottom of some of these bushes. And we're gonna have a tree here, so I think the tree should have a shadow here. So we'll just kind of put that in there. Maybe kind of saw like a nice little bump in there, so I'm gonna put a little shadow in there. But I'm also, I think I'm gonna kind of lighten this a little bit. kind of make it a little bit greenish. And come in here and put in some of this color as well. Right now I'm getting some really good spread on this stuff. But you can see I'm trying to maintain these kind of little shafts of light here. I feel like I kind of wanted to have another one here, but we'll see how that goes here. All right, so I'm kind of done using that brush, so I'm using that. But I want you guys to grab your biggest brush. If your biggest brush is your number 8 brush, you can use that. I have my trusty number 12 that you guys see me use a lot of class, but since I'm in my home studio, I'm going to use this bad boy here. Now the bristles are almost completely dry. They are slightly damp since I used that to wet the page. And I just want to make sure that these are pretty darn dry. So I'm just going to take a paper towel, kind of like dab it off. It's not 100% dry, but like having it 95% dry. So you want to put that brush in the white, and then you want to drag it through. Now I'm gonna give it a quick little rinse because any color, and that picked up some paint. And I just want to make sure that there is no paint on there. We want this brush for every single pull. Check and make sure that it is mostly dry and no paint. All right. Excellent. All right, I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna do a second pull. Oh, I kind of like that. I'm gonna leave that like that. Actually, let's see how it looks if I do this. It's not too bad. I can, once I make sure that color's off, you know, maybe give it a little rinse. Make sure you have that color completely gone. You can come in here and do this a few times. I probably should be doing it with a smaller brush right now, but that's okay. I'm actually, now that the brush is a little dirty, I'm using it to kind of like pull little bits of color around a little bit. Just kind of like giving it that, kind of like adding to that misty look. Now I'm gonna get the brush pretty clean again and almost 100% dry because I want to pull through a big heavy area here. So let's go. That's pretty good. Alrighty. So that feels pretty good. I can do a few more of these, just kind of they don't go the full way. I think that'll add a little bit of some nice atmosphere to this. Oh, that is not what I wanted. I am going to take a clean brush, get it loaded with some clean water, and I'm gonna dab it over that. That's why you clean the brush whenever you do those pulls from the white. All right. That is looking pretty fantastic. So at this point, I'm going to let it 100% dry, and then we're going to come back in and do some detail work. Okay, so now this is dry, or pretty darn close to dry. So what we need to do is we have this light effect. Now we need to establish the actual elements in here, such as grasses and trees and bark. What I'm envisioning is having a large tree here. Some of it's going into a little bit of the light here. And we'll have a few trees in the back here, but with a couple that are kind of in front here, but are still being a little bit affected from the light. So I'm going to do a couple treatments with color that are going to really showcase these trees are in front and also the trees in back. So let's do the trees that are going to be back here first. I feel like a good color for that is going to be kind of just like a mutish orange color. So I'm going to start with mostly some New Gamboge and cadmium red, but with a little bit of some ultramarine blue in there. And although that I feel is a great bark color, I think that that's going to be a little too intense here. So I'm going to keep muting this with a little bit of some ultramarine blue. And now we have this. I think that's going to be better suited for here. So I'm kind of envisioning like a couple trees kind of like coming up through here. And I want to kind of like just choose kind of like some bark designs coming up through here. And I am avoiding the light areas. And that is kind of annoying, but you will see how this will work out. So I'm getting my brush, I'm using my small brush, and I am getting it pretty dry as we got that previous brush. Just making sure that it's nice and dry there. And I'm going to fade it out a little bit here on these edges. Oh, you know what? That one needs to be a little whiter there. We'll get a little bit whiter there. And don't be afraid to dab on it a little bit. And I reach back into the color when I really need a dry brush. Just kind of like coming in here and wetting these edges and dabbing with the towel. I'm going to connect that one and dab it away. You know what? Now that I've got this brown on here, I feel like that is not good. I feel like it needs to be more gray. So I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue. And now it's more of a gray color. I'm going to get it a little bit more intense. I like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like come in here. Just kind of like kiss that color a little bit. And now my brush, I'm going to get that nice and dry again. And I'm using this dry brush to kind of like pick up some of this extra pigment here. I'm actually going to connect it here, but I'm going to kind of wipe it out a little bit. Dab, 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 dab. All right, that's pretty good. You know what, there's kind of like a weird thing here, so I'm going to kind of like have like a, oh, my color is a little light here, so I need to mix this back up again. And that, what the heck is that? Oh, that's on the brownish side. So that means I need to add a little bit more ultramarine blue. That's pretty good. I like that. Now I'm kind of like gonna have another branch kind of come off of it this direction. We'll kind of like throw a couple little ones like up like that. You know what, I'm going to connect that one a little bit too. But now we're into the dabbing, so just going to make sure my brush is nice and dry. Just get these edges, kind of like a fade connect, so you can just see the light is so intense that it's passing in front of these and obscuring this tree. And you can kind of like go with the intensity there. Kind of feel like that one should be a little bit more faded. So I am really liking how that is looking right there. And you know what? I kind of feel like this tree needs to come down to the ground here. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna connect it up here, but then we're gonna dab on it. And I need to get this even more intense, so I'm just going to kind of like mix up like a really intense little tiny patch of this kind of like dark gray. Of course, when you've mixed up a new color, test the color. I want to get it nice and dark down here, so I'm going to get it nice and dark. Don't be afraid to kind of like trace it back up a little bit. And you know what? I'm gonna kind of slosh it across there because I feel like that's appropriate here. And then I'm gonna dab it away. There we go. I think that's feeling pretty good. I'm just gonna kind of come in here and make a few wandering branches coming off here. Maybe this tree is not feeling too good and doesn't have like some lower branches here. You know, it's deep in the forest, you know, it has all of its branches up top, you know, wherever it sees it's working pretty good to be growing these days. All right, I'm pressing my luck here, so I'm gonna kind of like scrub on that a little bit. Not bad. Not bad. All right. Now that I kind of wanted the trees to be a little bit more in the distance, so I'm gonna kind of like sit up here a little bit more and kind of like work in just kind of like a few trees in the distance. And these I'm going to kind of like wipe out a little bit better. These need a little bit of a drier brush to encourage them to go away. Right, I should have made that a little bit more greenish. I'm gonna make a couple more branches that are kind of like a dark green. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of the ultramarine blue and the new gamboge. I'm also going to add like the lightest touch of some the cadmium red. I'm just going to draw a couple kind of branches of some trees back here. And just kind of like coming in here, nothing too crazy. I want to keep them thin so that helps kind of like have the illusion that they are far back there. All right, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to get a nice dry brush and like dab on some of these. Maybe use my brush to scrub on some of these. Don't want to use too big of a brush here because it's going to just kind of like mess with some of the things that you have going on in there. Definitely in this little lighter area, definitely want to kind of like make sure that those are faded. And I think now that I put in those lighter ones, so I'd recommend you put in those lighter ones first before you kind of put in this darker tree in front here. So I'm liking how that's feeling. So we're getting a good feeling of depth in here now. All right, now I want to get the other tree established over here. So just trying to think. I kind of feel like the tree needs to kind of like come over on this light a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some straight new gamboge. And I don't want it to, and actually I'm going to add a little bit, I want to get a little orangish. We're going to kind of have a little fun with some orange paint here in a little bit. And we will see how it's feeling on that. So that's a little intense. I'm going to add a little bit more water. That's a little bit more what I'm looking for. That's better. All right, so I'm kind of imagining that there's some branches kind of peeking out here. So I'm just kind of like, okay, so there's some little bit of some branches coming out here. So just playing around with that. And this is going to be like the sides of the branches are getting illuminated by the sunlight filtering through here. And you kind of want it to have that faded look. So I'm also dabbing that a little bit. All right, I kind of want to make some of these trees a little bit brighter. So I kind of think I'm going to use some phthalo blue because that's going to make, and some lemon yellow, because phthalo blue and lemon yellow make some of the brightest greens that you can have. I want to be heavy on the lemon yellow because I want it more yellowish than I want it greenish. I probably should have made a little pile of lemon yellow first and then slowly added the phthalo green to it, because apparently I like wasting paint. So I want to come through here and kind of dab around on this. And I am just going to kind of create this shape of some tree up here. Maybe I'm going to make some finer marks. Maybe I'm kind of leaving some of that color that we already have on here going through here. And I am going to do a preliminary dab just to kind of lighten that up for the filtered, because one of the things is we want to encourage that filtered light look, and keeping our colors a very light value is going to help make that occur. I kind of have a white patch up here, which is really going to help make this tree area look nice and light. All right. All right. Maybe kind of like a few here. Thing is, if there's anything really dark here, it's not really worth it to try and put it there. So I'm just gonna kind of like put it in a couple spots. Maybe on some of the really light areas it will kind of encourage it a little bit more, but anywhere where it's already dark, that's not gonna matter too much. All right, now I'm gonna come back in with some ultramarine blue, the new gamboge, just to kind of have it be that dark color that we have previously. And I'm just gonna come in here and put some nice dark shadows in a couple spots. Put some nice dark shadows in a couple spots. Actually, I maybe should put a little bit of some cadmium red in there. Just want it. Now we got a little bit more of a foresty green on there. I'm liking that. All right. Just kind of like on some of these areas that I'm imagining this tree here, where it's going to have like some foliage coming off of it. Just want to kind of like have a few little leaves here that we'll see, because like we're not trying to paint every leaf, but if you paint a few leaves, some of your brush strokes will suggest that. All right, kind of feeling like I'm getting some nice couple groups going on here. And actually this nice little burst here of lightness against the dark is going to make for a really nice shape here. Okay. Now I'm gonna kind of come in here with like a really dark color. And I'm going to paint kind of like the my trunk of my tree that I'm seeing here. I think he's got a nice strong trunk coming up through there. Maybe a couple kind of thinner branches coming up through here. Maybe a little branch coming off there. All right. gonna make this a little bit darker with just adding a little bit more of the what's that called, the ultramarine blue there. Maybe do a little fade here. There we go. So I'm kind of liking this so far. The sun effect is coming through here really nice. So two more things I'm going to do. I want to kind of like get a little bit more of that glow going on here, and then we'll define a couple grassy areas going on here. So I'm going to come back to this orangey color, and where I see some light coming through here, I'm going to kind of like just put in a couple little streaks here. And then I'm going to take my clear water. I'm going to kind of blend it out. Maybe need a little bit more orange down here. There we go. Just having that warmth of the orange on there is really going to help communicate that to your viewers of your artwork, that it is just this really warm and inviting scene. That's almost a little too sharp there, so I'm gonna get a little water and dab that up. Having a couple like this one, I'm kind of like feeling pretty good with. All right. You can actually just kind of like layer it on. You don't need to kind of wipe it away. I kind of feel like it needs this warmth here. Yeah. Don't want my brush too wet here because I'm coming up against the tree here. There. Kind of got a little bit of some angle off here, but you know, what can you do sometimes? Oh, fiddlesticks. Somebody didn't check to see if their brush was clean. Okay, mostly save that. I am really enjoying that orange there. I'm gonna kind of come back in here and try and get a little bit more orangey glow in a few places. I kind of like cranked up my orange a little bit more intensely here. I'm really liking that. Now I could have left that as it was pretty well, but I sometimes can't leave things alone. So I'm going for it. Once again, you do not need to do this. I think it looked pretty darn good as it was. And I think, you know, I'm gonna kind of creep up here, kind of like make it have like a little bit of some glow around here. I think that's feeling pretty good. A little bit of a dab out here to kind of like have it be a little more circular. Let's see, how sharp is that? That maybe needs to be dulled a little bit. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave that alone now. I think I might have went a little too crazy there. Sometimes you just gotta go a little crazy though. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is we have, you know, some pretty defined areas down in here, and I just want to kind of come in here and tighten that up. So just like kind of like define the edge of this tree here from the sun. And again, you don't necessarily need to do that, but I think it was needed to kind of put in the sun here. Maybe if you have like a tree that's kind of like coming through here, you'd want to put in some grasses that are coming through here. I'm kind of like painting into a wetter area now. So that is, I'm not sure that is good for me or not good for me. I'm gonna throw in some grasses here. I'm making my grasses kind of small due to where these are in the composition. So just kind of like coming through here. Coming through here. Oh yeah, that's feeling. Maybe make some bigger strokes here. All right. And I'm gonna kind of like flatten these out a little bit, just so it kind of feels like maybe there's a little bit of a path leading back there. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Just get a little bit more texture there. All right. I think I'm, all right, now that I'm looking a little more closely at this, I think we're gonna get a little bit more intensity of some orange here, just to kind of like wake that up a little bit. All right. Just dabbing my brush, getting this nice and dry. Okay. I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm pretty satisfied with that. I think I might try and do a second work here, just to do it on a non-cotton paper, just to kind of vibe check it to see if that's working out. But I kind of want to get this done here and get this video going, because I said I promised it today, and with the little bit of video editing that I want to do with this to make sure you guys can see the palette and everything, that's going to be a little extra time. So, all right, excellent. Well, thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.